I want to go to our main discussion about the role of surprise returns, debuts, um, and what our kind of favorite returns are or debuts. Again, what makes them tick? What do you and because there's always a surprise return that sticks in someone's mind. So I think I want to start off by asking you guys like what is a return that you just vividly remember or something that just really gave you goosebumps. Chris, I'll start with you. What's a return that just like and it's like any promotion, like anything that just sticks out to your mind?
Definitely CM Punk's return in AEW specifically. I think that was a debut because that was the biggest time difference between him being gone and then coming back to wrestling. I think that was the biggest impact because sure he came back in Survivor Series and specifically to WWE and that was like oh you'd never see that coming. But I think that just that giant gap of like essentially almost 10 years, it was like 7 or 8 years or whatever at that time where he debuted. Um, yeah, that I would say sticks out to me the most. Then I would probably say The Rock coming back for that specific cycle in 2011 or 10 or whatever that was for him to
Are you
feud
talking
with
about
John Cena.
when he was like the host of WrestleMania?
Yeah, that thing. And they're like, here's the host of WrestleMania. And it's like kind of obvious because they got the electricity going and all that.
Yeah, well, it wasn't initially obvious when they were doing that because there were like things that people were saying like Justin Bieber and that kind of stuff. Like it wasn't 100% certain even then who it was. So I would definitely say that as one of mine. Andres, what about you? What would you say sticks out to your mind the most for their
You're right.
returns?
Definitely Triple H's return. Back in the early 2000s when he came back from his like first torn quad repair with like surgery, and he was gone for like a year, I think. And like it was funny because he was like still heel, you know. But he came back and he had like, such a huge pop. And I'm actually always been a big fan of his, even if he was a bad guy, because I was a big DX guy too and stuff. So that was actually a big one for me. That was actually one of the bigger returns for me. That's like, with me it resonated because just seeing like my favorite wrestler come back from such a damning injury, you know. And then he did it like a few more times after that, unfortunately.
And when he injured, he was a heel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he
And when
even
he
said that
came
when he
back, he
came
was a
back, he
heel.
wasn't sure.
Mm.
Yeah, but he wasn't sure like his reception how it would be. Because I remember that was something I saw in one of his interviews. He was like, "Oh yeah, I wasn't sure if the crowd was going to accept me or not, because especially you know like my character and then being gone." But no, it was a huge pop for him.
And then did they just maintain him as a face for that short amount of time? Because I feel like not too long he went into like a feud with Shawn Michaels, didn't he? And he was the heel again.
Yeah, he never really was a face for terribly too long. It was pretty much throughout his career.
He was a face through the Jericho thing, and then he lost the title to Hogan, so he kind of stood a face by giving Hogan a hug. And
You're right.
then he was floundering around until the end of summer where he turned on HBK.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good one, honestly. And that's I think that's still one of like the loudest pops that someone ever got. Definitely up there.
Who?
Triple H when he returned from his first quad tear,
Uh,
like 2002 or
was that
2001.
was that leather and denim jacket?
Yeah, it's the
Triple
leather
H?
denim
Yeah.
Triple H.
Yeah.
David, what about you? Which one sticks out in your mind?
Edge in 2020.
Yeah, man, I am upset I missed that.
Oh yeah,
I watched.
yeah.
Yeah.
At the
So,
Rumble?
Totally.
Yeah.
So that was the same day Kobe Bryant died.
That's
So,
Oh
right.
crap! Talk
Welcome
about
back, Kobe
Yeah.
Bryant.
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
So like I just remember like being at work, like hearing Kobe died, like seeing it, and then like just like the rest of the work was just like customers coming in, just like talking about it, and just remember like being bummed. And I was like, well, at least the Rumble's tonight, and there's like not really a lot going on about Edge coming back, and then that music hit.
Talk about like, and I guess I'll go into this after this, but talk about like like it wasn't even really talked about too much.
Right.
You know, like those kind of like appearances, you're like, that wasn't even on my radar. That something like that would even be remotely possible. And then, you know, he shows up. I mean, that is one I wished I saw live, because I saw that in the periphery as I was like kind of like just reading, you know, wrestling headlines and not necessarily watching the product.
That was
But
one of those times I shed a smart tear or two. Yeah,
yeah,
dude.
that's
That one
awesome.
guy with CM Punk, bro.
Or like even like when we
United
seen
Center.
The Rock, even because The Rock was a surprise appearance when he beat up Cody.
That's true. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I guess we could also even talk about like, yeah, just like they're obviously like in WWE, but like just like the appearances, because you don't always know. Like sometimes they schedule it ahead of time or whatever. But like that one when we were in Raw,
Yeah.
yeah, that was crazy. Because I mean, I kind of like gave it away because we were sitting at an angle where I'm like seeing someone waiting by the curtain. I'm like, holy shit, I think that's The Rock right there. I don't know if I was telling David or Andres,
Yeah,
but I was like,
Here's a question though, as far as like spoilers and leaks and dirt sheet stuff. Would you say that's more recent? Because like let's just say even as far back or as more recently as like 2020 with the Edge thing. I mean, was there a lot of like speculation talk on the internet, or did we just start to tap into that shit like recently in 2022 and onward?
no, I mean, don't you remember like when we were watching as teenagers, like in the 2000s, like spoilers and returns? Like, do you remember the Jericho return, the Save Us Y2J,
Oh
that
yeah.
whole thing?
Well, that was
Like,
obvious. Though.
well, it wasn't like they weren't sure necessarily if it was Jericho. I think there was a lot of, because like Save Us, you know, like they thought maybe because he did like the whole Millennium thing, and they thought it might have been like that version, but there were still like during that era, you know, like all the dirt sheets and community boards were still like speculating who it could be. They're bringing up a number of different people, and Y2J was in the conversation, but it wasn't necessarily 100% like for sure that people knew, you know. So I don't think it's, to answer your question, I don't think it's like a 2020s thing. I think it's been around since since at least
Meltzer.
since at least Jericho debuted on Raw in 1999 or 98.
It's been since like Meltzer, bro.
Let's
Like
I mean, you'd have to be like subscribed to his
late 80s.
newsletter, I guess, at that
no,
point.
I mean also, I mean think about like Angel Fire community boards. Like there were communities that existed during that time.
True.
Like wrestling fans will find their, you know, group, and there, when there's a will, there's a way. And I mean, the internet just kind of really started to be something that's commercial, you know, in the 90s, and especially more specifically the late 90s. So when Jericho came out, you know, in Chicago, because that's where he debuted, it was at the Allstate Arena. Fucking cat. He basically, yeah, I mean, like there were signs in the crowd already, like Millennium Man, Chris Jericho. Like that's not something you just like magically think about, you know. And if you think about that specific era, I mean, it's like TV. It's like, it's not like it was like streaming or stuff. It's like it had to be appointment television. You had to sit down and watch this, and it's not like the world was as connected as it is now, and they still figured out that Jericho was, you know, showing up to WWF. Like you had to be in those dirt sheets in the late 90s to know that that was happening, you know. So I would say it's been around since the internet, you know, and even before that, I'm sure like newsletters that people were getting. I don't know how Meltzer was doing newsletters in the 80s or 90s, early 90s. Maybe he actually was like mailing it out, but it existed in some form.
I'll never forget when I seen the NWO. There was two smarks sitting behind me, and they said that X-Pac and HBK were both gonna end up NWO members.
Oh.
And
I
that's
remember
just how
watching
I
it.
got like
Those clips.
that's how I believed in the dirt sheets from the rip.
Yeah.
Cause like I remember like the kid that lived upstairs from us, like he liked wrestling too, and I told him like afterwards, I was like, yeah, there's some dudes in the back saying that this was gonna happen, and he was like, no way, man, but blah blah blah,
Everybody had the
and then
kid upstairs. Hey,
and then
side
come
note.
summertime.
Who the fuck was that kid that we went to upstairs that we played Mortal Kombat 4 with? Who was that?
What?
You remember what I'm talking about?
No.
It was like it was on Eddy Street, I think, or something. And we went like upstairs and we had Mortal Kombat 4 and something. He was a slightly older kid, I think.
I honestly don't remember. I don't know
Wow.
what you're talking about.
He
Must have
watches the
made it
show.
up.
It might have happened, but it must have not been a significant memory for me.
Shots fired.
So maybe we got to go down a list
Luigi Mangione, bra bra bra.
of things that you remember that I don't remember, and vice versa. But yeah, I think for me, for surprise returns, I mean, you already touched on The Rock. I think that was one of the bigger ones during like that, like the early 2010s, 2000s. The Y2J one was also pretty cool. You brought that up. I was actually also pretty hyped when Shane McMahon showed up. I don't know if that was like in the dirt sheets or if that was just a total surprise. I honestly don't remember. But that was another one that was like a genuine like surprise announcement that I enjoyed. But how do you feel, I guess, in the age of social media leaks? How much does the element of surprise, does it still matter? Do you feel like people just want to know immediately who's going to debut? Do you feel like people like surprises like that?
I think
I
it's
think
a
so.
very, very niche group of people that just need to know, like they need to know ahead of time. I think a majority of people appreciate the surprise because I mean, like we can use the example of the Survivor Series CM Punk thing. I mean, that wasn't really speculated at all. Well, I guess there was some speculation, right? But there was no real like confirmation because it's like the way they did it at the end was like they had the trademark shit run. It's like, okay, he ain't showing up, whatever, show's over, everybody go home. And then they like zoom in and then it's like you hear that
I told you guys.
yeah. So I mean, like you could tell that Triple H probably thinks about these things and how can we still make it like surprising even if it is like all these like dirt sheet people with all the scrum shit that always happens now post every single pay-per-view, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So
That's true. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that I mean that debut. If we had to talk about like in the 2020s, obviously we're still kind of early in the
Sting.
decade, but
throw Sting in there for AEW.
oh yeah. Well, for AEW, but I was also gonna say for WWE. Sting,
Oh, that too.
at Survivor Series, like in a WWE ring. I think it was like when it was like during the Best for Business Triple H, Stephanie, like their McMahon 2.0 kind of thing. I mean, that was another wild one.
2014, 2015-ish, right?
Now, was that in the dirt sheets? I don't remember if that was actually speculated on.
Sting?
I don't. Sting and WWE, because they think did they debut in Survivor Series? I think so.
So I don't remember if Sting was advertised for the game, but around then, that's what they were kind of doing. That was when they would advertise somebody for the game, and then they'd show up on TV.
Oh yeah, it was like
Oh, you're right.
2K
You're right.
13
He
or
was, yeah,
14.
he was in the game first. Like they had some kind of weird deal before that, and that had conversations going. So there was speculation that maybe he'd do something more than just that. Because I think that the logic at the time that maybe it's not likely is because it's a separate entity from WWE. So it's not like he's directly involved with Vince McMahon, but it's a nice opportunity for him to be in like a really popular wrestling game franchise. And then they worked something out. And then I think people were speculating and hoping that it would be, but I don't think it was 100%. But it was, I think, on the radar for people. But that still doesn't necessarily mean it's 100% true. But yeah,
Saraya got a
Absolutely.
big pop. I mean, when she showed up to AEW for the first time, that was a pretty big pop.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because it was like that the Ronnie Radke song. It's like I don't know who the fuck that's supposed to be, and then they popped her name up, and it was just like fuck. So yeah.
So let me ask you this. So do you feel like it's better to hint at a debut through cryptic teases? So, i.e., the
Gooning?
Y2J Save Us or the Millennium Countdown or the Bray Wyatt QR codes that they did when he came back. Or I guess the Wyatt Six, I guess they also had their own version like that. Do you feel like it's better to do something like that, or would you rather it just be a total surprise?
Honestly,
No build, no nothing.
total supply total surprise would be ideal. I think there's instances like you mentioned that fine, but I think if it's like too much, it's like, oh, they're coming like literally every single week when they would do like any kind of like segment for like ruthless aggression stars where they would do a lot of like little promo stuff every single week for like some kind of a debut. Um, yeah, I would say it's always better if it's a surprise.
Agreed.
What do you think, David?
Depends.
I
But
guess
What
most
it
of the
is
time
depends.
I
what
lean
does it
towards
depend?
surprise. Uh, sometimes it's cool to like build towards it, especially if you could swerve them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it needs to be masterfully done. I think if it's just
Yeah.
too much like really just like dangling the carrot in front of you, like it's like, okay, well, this is who it most likely is, and then eventually it's like, yeah, we confirmed that this is was like the Edge debut at Wrestle Dream was cool. I mean, there was all that speculation with the contract and stuff like that it was up. Um, but there wasn't anything beyond that, I don't think. And then, same thing. They did the same day little vignette thing with the car and all that stuff, and he's driving, and then you got, Christian in the ring, and then it's that pause, and there's music hits, and it's like, fuck. So
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I do also think it depends because I think like the introduction and especially how Triple H has been handling those kind of like build up things, like I guess specifically with the Wyatts, Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt Six with like the QR codes and even just like they're cleverly putting it in like backstage segments on like a box or something. Like they're just really going, balls out, like doing all these kind of hidden things, like actual puzzles and stuff. I feel like that kind of stuff really adds to it too because it kind of builds to the hype. You got people speculating constantly. Like I think most people assume or think it's like a Bray Wyatt or whatever, but I think there's still always that kind of lingering doubt because you're not 100% certain. So
One
I think it depends.
one I'll give a lot of credit to for AEW is for Brody Lee. They didn't know who ran the Dark Order. Like they just kept referring to the Exalted One, and like the internet was going back and forth on it being either Brody Lee or Matt Hardy. And then it leaned heavy towards Matt Hardy, and then we got Brody Lee.
oh man, we can't forget about that Hardy's debut in WWE. I mean,
That was a good surprise.
that was like ethereal.
Are you talking about like the WrestleMania?
The WrestleMania?
match?
Yeah, like the tag
Yeah.
team 6-10 man
Oh, yeah.
tag or whatever the fuck it was.
And a New Day was the one that called him out.
Yeah,
Nah, I mean
exactly.
that
The best tag team of all time just
was
called out.
nah, man.
The
That goes
second
to the
best
Hardys.
tag team.
Hardys, Edge, Christian, and then maybe them. Like if we had to make it, if I had a gun in my head, if Luigi was in my
now
head,
we changing. Now we changing. It went from 12 to number 3
In an
Quite the
episode.
jump.
in an episode. Changed his mind in 20 minutes.
flip flopping.
I mean that is a good one. So here's a good segue into that. So, what do you think is more impactful? And you can say for the general crowd or for yourself personally? Is it more, or surprise returns more impactful if it's like a returning veteran like Jericho, or like a debuting star with no history in the company, like if MJF showed up in WWE, you know, versus like Hulk Hogan or Steve Austin returns or shows up, or CM Punk, for example.
I think
AJ Styles at the Rumble was fun.
Ooh, that was another
That
one
was
I was
exciting.
gonna bring up.
I think that's the cool debut in like recent years is to have because now that you have AEW and all these like promotions, TNA, like having a what's her name, a Jordan Grace pop in and all these kinds of things, that crossover, that Forbidden Door stuff is, I think, the more intriguing kind of a debut, because then it's like, oh shit, they've crossed the pond and it's so forbidden or whatever. So yeah, if like an MJF showed up to WWE in like a a Royal Rumble or something like that, I mean that's pretty insane.
I mean, they did that with Jade Cargill, right? Like she
Yeah,
debuted
yeah,
at the Rumble, and that worked really well for her. I mean, that if we were talking about like a way to like establish someone really quickly, the way that they debuted Jade Cargill, I think, was almost perfect.
I put Jade Cargill and
Yeah.
Bianca Belair before the New Day.
What?
Nah, I'm just okay.
Sorry, I had to cough because I was so surprised. I mean, like I think they are a good tag team, but I still think, I mean, the New Day has a decade on them, you know,
Yeah,
in terms of
no.
accomplishments.
That was troll.
So that's a hot take. But I do think that they're a good tag team. And if WWE actually, keeps putting energy or thought into their tag team division, then yes. But yeah, so yeah, Jade Cargill, I mean, I think she was a really good surprise, or not, well, it wasn't, it was one of those where it's a person who has not been in the company, and she made a really big impact. And I think that same Rumble, Naomi came back, didn't she? Wasn't that also the same PLE where she showed up? So yeah, I think it's they're both nice to see. I think for me personally, I'm more intrigued by the ones that don't have any background, but like you've seen them, like you said on AEW or some indie show or whatever. I think that's more intriguing. So like a Jade Cargill is more excited for than a Naomi or AJ Styles. I mean, he was in WWE, but like it was like a blip, and most people don't even remember that he was like in WWE. It was like very, very short. So, for him to show up at the Rumble, he was also like my pick when we were doing the Rumble. I think it was at Telcamps. That's where we saw it.
Yeah.
It was 2016, I think, right? So, yes, I mean, like that was awesome. That's really cool. And same thing with Motor City Machine Guns. I mean, like they've been like such an established tag team, and then I mean they're basically in the twilight of their career, for being honest. And then they still like are like, yeah, we're gonna go to WWE, and then they give them the tag belts, and I think they dropped them to fucking DIY.
Fucking
But
scrubs.
and it's a heel DIY, but I just can't see Gargano as a great heel. But we'll see.
Here's the thing about the Forbidden Door type debuts, though. I feel like unless you're in the know and you don't watch the WWE product, more specifically WWE, because WWE really attracts a lot more of that casual audience. The pops usually aren't as massive as they could be. I think it's just they're definitely feeding more of the hardcore internet wrestling kind of like people with that kind of stuff. But yeah, I would say the debuts aren't as hot as they can be. If it was like, let's say, a Stone Cold popping out or somebody like that, or the Hardys or something like that, at least within the WWE sphere, because like if they showed up on TNA or AEW, I feel like anything that's not necessarily WWE, you can kind of assume that those people are more of a hardcore wrestling fan because they're probably still watching WWE on top of all of that. So
yeah, I think I would agree with that. So when it comes to surprise returns or bringing back people, I think there's also a space for, you know, nostalgia and bring back legends, kind of like Goldberg or returning Undertaker. I feel like he made more returns than actual like matches in the past like 5 or 6 years, or
Holla,
before since he
holla.
retired. Um, so how do you feel? You know, how do you feel like that kind of affects like the roster? Do you feel like they do a good job kind of like mixing it in with like, you know, regular talent where it's not necessarily overpowering, or like, you know, yeah, kind of like taking the air out of other acts, like if you have a returning Goldberg, you know what I mean? Like, how do you guys view like a Goldberg return? He's already been obviously in the twilight of his career, comes back, he wins like what, two more WWE Championship belts or whatever. Um, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think of that kind of return? Like just an older WWE or WCW legend or someone like that, even like a Sting, for example. You know, just coming in. Obviously, has been in the business for 25 years, but then he's like in the main event.
Yeah,
Do you
but
care?
it's politics though. I think at that point it's a politics thing, like a personality thing, like how they specifically interact with the business itself. I think Goldberg's kind of self-serving. I would say Sting is not self-serving because he put over a guy like Darby, and kind of like he was definitely more of what a guy in his at his point in his career should be doing, is putting over younger talent. So yeah, whereas Goldberg's kind of just like, yeah, I'm Goldberg and I'm gonna do the Goldberg thing, put the belt on me, give me my couple $1 million, go home, kind of a
My
deal.
Saudi money.
Yeah, give me that Saudi bag, bruh. Give me that toad. um, so yeah, I think it comes down to the individual and the politics of it, and kind of like where that kind of goes. I think that's what it comes down to with older talent that's kind of like established, like a Hogan or somebody like that. But Sting's a good example of being kind of from that same era, but not as self-serving as somebody like a Goldberg or a Hulk Hogan, where his ego is like maniacal. You know what I mean?
Bret Hart over here.
Fucking Bret Hart, yeah.
Bill Goldberg. Bret Hart, is that you in the
Fuck
bottom
Big
left
Goldberg,
there?
bruh. Hey, fuck
David,
Big
you have to, when
Goldberg.
you're editing this video, to just like slowly have pink shades just fall on Chris's face as he's talking about Bill Goldberg
That'd be good.
with his book behind him. So, I mean, what do you think about, like, we're talking about like nostalgia acts, and I feel like it kind of did that for us to a certain degree when we were younger, where it's like you had like a returning person who made like a cameo, like, I don't know, the IRS or the IRA or whatever, or the IRA.
Irish right, or what is it? The Irish Republic something?
Well, it was like, yeah, it was that army. No, I'm not talking about the faction in Northern Ireland. I'm talking about, or the IRS. Like like those people, like obviously, somewhat you have a genuine like pop for people like that. Do you feel like are there like wrestlers that we deem to be like gods that you feel like when they debut now they feel more like I don't know,
Second coming
like
of Christ.
well, yeah, but like for younger people, like it probably. Do you feel like it's as big of an impact? Like if we experience like I don't know, like what about like say CM Punk? I mean, I guess he's a different kind of story, but he was like, I don't know, at the peak 10 years ago, and then he comes back 10 years later. I'm talking about like for teenagers. Like, do they give a shit? I don't know.
John
I guess it's.
Cena.
I mean, yeah, like John Cena. Like I'm trying to think, like if you have like a teenager right now, like someone who's 18, early 20s, do you feel like they are as invested in people like that? You know what I mean? I feel
Yeah.
like, yeah. What do you think, David?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
So at work, there's a 20-year-old kid that likes wrestling, but he thinks LA Knight's annoying.
Okay.
Like it doesn't connect to him.
You know what? Yeah, speak to me on that.
Like,
So, like, do you talk wrestling with him a lot?
yeah,
Like, so, you said he's 20?
yeah.
Who does he like in the current
I'm over here saying he
landscape?
doesn't like LA Knight. I would just keep saying, yeah,
Yeah.
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 So who does he like in the current like landscape? As he
Uh,
said.
Bloodline. Oh, well, 2.0 Bloodline. CM Punk.
Oh, he does like CM Punk.
Yeah. But I think he likes CM Punk off the hype. I don't think
He's
CM
like,
Punk.
yeah, that guy CM Punk, he's cool or
Yeah,
something.
like he's from Chicago. I'm from Chicago.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like,
I feel like I think that also affects, like, it depends on what 20-year-old you ask a 20-year-old who's like in the Chicagoland area, then he'll probably say he likes CM Punk. But I think you also make a good point about, the FOMO type of stuff, like riding that hype train. Even if you're not necessarily a fan, you're gonna be just swept up in the hype that you're just gonna like it and cheer for him anyway, even if like you don't know who the hell he was 5 minutes ago, right?
yeah.
So
Or like Braun Breaker doesn't really connect to him, but it's like
how long has he been
connects to
watching?
since Shield.
Really?
Earlier
That's
So
than
about a
so
Shield.
like
decade.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of
So
his life. Young
Huh.
Dude, he
life.
was like a 10-year-old then, right? At that
Yeah.
point?
Yeah.
Jesus, that's so crazy
maybe
to think about,
9,
bro.
more like 9 or 10.
That's
Um,
crazy.
Yeah, so okay, so here you go. So I guess like because Undertaker has been kind of like coming and going. Like if he sees like an Undertaker return, like did he get the same kind of feeling for like Undertaker? Do you know, like, or even Goldberg? Like let's say Goldberg, like what he has
Bill
no
Goldberg.
what's that?
I said Bill Goldberg.
Yeah, for Bill Goldberg, he has like, I mean, like, so he was born in what, 2004.
Something
Right.
like that.
Right.
So like he literally came out of his mom's womb, and Goldberg and Lesnar got dropped on his neck, and they got booed out of Madison Square Garden, and he was basically just breathing air, for the first time when that came out. So he has like no like history.
He doesn't even know what a
Nothing. It's
WCW is.
yeah. He doesn't.
Yeah,
What's a
fuck's the
WCW?
That's
Exactly. So,
I mean,
yeah. So, like, has he said anything about like the Goldberg run? Have you ever talked about like that before?
No.
Because I
And
feel like that'd be
he
interesting.
likes wrestling because like he watched the like cleaner era Kenny Omega, so it's like he grew up like liking wrestling.
Yeah.
But yeah, like fuck LA Knight just doesn't make sense to him.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, like, I think
Yeah.
even when we were younger,
yeah.
I feel like even like I don't know, like for example, like Bret Hart. Like I didn't live through Bret Hart's era. I was younger and I wasn't paying attention. I lived through his era, like I was alive, but I wasn't paying attention to it. But I still like revered him because I was like reading into lore, so at least for myself, even if I wasn't invested or grew up with Bret Hart. Yeah, like exactly. I mean, it is wrestling lore. I mean,
No,
like you just
I
get
like
invested in it.
using that word. That's a good word.
Yeah.
I trust
So
him.
I feel like like
trust
there's
you.
there's a legend that's built into someone like Bret Hart, right? So
Right.
if he makes a return
Luigi.
where you're like
No, just-
this is the guy I've been reading books about, watching documentaries and all that kind of stuff, and he's back in a ring. Obviously not at his peak, but I mean it's still cool to see him. So it's that like the famous Montreal Screwjob. You're seeing it play out, in real time in 2000, in the year of our Lord 2010. I mean that's wild. So again, I think it depends, but I just think it's fascinating to see like people that we think are amazing, like kids. I mean, kids, they're in their 20s who are like never even like heard of them or care for like people that we think are amazing.
Like he's never actively seen Stone Cold.
Right, exactly.
Damn.
I mean, I guess minus the Kevin Owens match, right?
Yeah.
Or, well, no, he would have been like what, 3 when it was the McMahon versus Trump match. He was born in 2004. Because that was another good pop when Stone Cold returned to be the referee. for that match. But yeah, same thing. Oh my god, what are you showing on there? Something that'll get us demonetized and banned?
I think it's it's the Swedish Chef, and it says "You mama,
Oh,
your last Mia."
yeah, I saw that before.
Oh man.
So let's see. I'm trying to think what else I can talk about here. Do you think that if we're looking at AEW and WWE in their approach to surprise returns or debuts, do you think there's a difference in their approach? I don't know if there is.
You're
I'm
saying
wondering if you
AEW
guys-
versus WWE?
Yeah. Do you think there's a difference in their approach to like surprise debuts?
I think WWE's or AEW seems to really bank on really big debuts. I mean it's an entire meme. The whole all elite thing is very AEW meme as far as like somebody from a different promotion perhaps showing up to AEW. So it's kind of baked into it, I feel. Into the DNA of what AEW is. So you never know who's going to be all elite.
Here's a question. Do you feel like there may have been an over reliance on it? You know what I mean? I don't know why this is my perception. I could just be completely making it up, but it feels like W or AEW, like their returns, it just kind of feels like that's kind of like their bread and butter. Like, oh, we got Okada, we got Ospreay, we got Mercedes. Like, I don't know. It feels like they've been kind of like relying on these kind of like big returns and signings. And I guess I could say the same thing for WWE with Jade Cargill, but I don't feel like they needed them to be there. It felt like it was like a cherry on top, you know, like they had banger feuds already, but AEW, at least in the past year, seems to rely on like the big names they signed. Do you feel like there's some truth to that?
Well, I would say yes, but I would say this though is that WWE is the juggernaut on the playing field. So from a business standpoint, if you're trying to create some level of hype and you have the capital to do so, yeah, you're gonna bring somebody in like Mercedes, perhaps way overpriced. You know, maybe hindsight, you'd probably want to pay her a little less, but you know, having the potential of having somebody like that on your roster is a huge thing for somebody who's, you know, considered the Pepsi to Coke, right? So I think for AEW as a business standpoint, it makes total sense to try to bring in these very recognizable names like an Adam Copeland, Edge, or a Saraya, especially, you know, like or CM Punk at one point, you know what I mean? Because it generates some level of hype to at least momentarily, and then hopefully they can keep some of that audience. But it makes sense for AEW compared to WWE, who is the juggernaut, who's the brand name, who's the Kleenex or whatever you want to call it, you know, of the industry.
How much do you feel like a surprise, or not even a surprise, a debut, like how much of that, you know what, let's say how like a surprise debut, how much of that is powered by the debut itself, versus like, because like I guess what I'm trying to say is like you can have a debut and there's a bunch of hype for the first month, but then it could also fall off the rails and kind of lose steam like that. It loses its luster once, you know, like I feel like if I'm honest, I feel like Okada kind of has that feeling for himself, because in my opinion, there was like this interesting story with the Elite, and then it just kind of really went nowhere, in my opinion. So like, and they had like this whole like 1-2-3 punch of like Mercedes, Okada, Ospreay, and something about it just kind of made it lose steam. So do you feel like, you know, when you pair a surprise debut, I mean, how much of that, of a good storyline or planning, I guess, is important when you're, building someone up or hyping someone up to come back? Because would you agree that it can only take a character so far in a surprise debut?
For sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in before I do.
Go ahead.
No, I agree. 'Cause, like, to your point too, like you said, Marcin, like the 1, 2, 3, like yeah, they're all there, they're doing their thing, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like AEW's really, at least as of lately, has really been bringing in like the reception to what they're expecting, I guess, because you see the memes about the arenas and how they sell out and stuff, and how they're not selling out, I should say, the ratings and stuff. I don't know. I think maybe they were just more relying on just getting them in right away, and then when they got them, it's like okay, they did some cool stuff with them, and then now it's like, where are they going with this?
Yeah, I mean
So,
that's kind of what I was more or less gonna say is there needs to be a plan at least like a couple months out as far as where their character is going to go within the storyline or whatever it is, because I mean I'd be curious to see and to know what the creative process is when they're actually talking about contracts and stuff like that, like where's your character going to go. It might be as simple as like, well, we're going to put the belt on you in like a month or two, and then maybe all that in between stuff is kind of like more, I don't know. It really depends on Tony Khan's writing process, and is it a day of, is it a South Park thing where they literally write an episode within the week of airing the episode or whatever, or is there like an entire structure months out where this is going to happen, so I mean that's what it ultimately comes down to. But from an optic standpoint, yeah, I mean it's definitely what you see on TV as far as just like, okay, well, Okada seemed like a big deal. They were doing the elite thing, and now he's just kind of floating around. He is Continental champ, so I mean he's got that going for him. So it really comes down to what happens at World's End for him. But yeah, I digress.
Good points. So, let me ask this, and I honestly can't think of one, but maybe you guys can. Um, what has there been like a debut that just didn't work? Like it was poorly handled. Either it was like a bad creative direction, or it was just timing, and it kind of like ruined the wrestler's momentum. I mean, I guess we kind of talked about Okada and stuff, but because their momentum kind of, I thought, stopped. But like, can you guys think of anyone like, and it doesn't have to be AEW, it could be WWE, like anyone that just had a debut and then it just became like a stinker, or not as hyped up as it should have been.
like the debut was hype, but then after that, it just derailed really quick.
Yeah, like if it's a poorly handled debut. Like they showed up
Oh.
and it just didn't work, you know. And I guess it doesn't even have to be a surprise debut, because you know what? I could think of like, do you remember Kizarny? Do you guys remember like the
That's
vignette?
literally who I was just thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. So like he was like what, early 2007? Like they were doing these vignettes, and then he comes out and
There was a few guys
nothing.
that were kind of doing
What
that.
fart?
Rosebuds, that dude. I mean, he was kind of there for a bit, but he was more. It seemed like he was more comic relief. You know what I mean?
Bro.
Yeah. Adam Rose, he said.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, what's his name? What? Like exactly. I mean, he was kind of there, but nothing came of him. But there were a lot of vignettes with that guy. Or what was the Indian dude's name? He had like a bunch of vignettes.
Was it Veer
Beer
Mahan?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
And
yeah.
beer.
Yep, him.
The jizz face, the permanent jizz face.
Omos.
Yes,
Where's Omos? Is he
that's
gone?
true.
I think he's working with like on the kind of like in the office side type.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like all the Vince McMahon. I mean, there's probably a whole laundry list. I mean, you look at the '90s of like throwaway gimmicks. You know what I mean?
Honestly, you might even, and I guess I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but Bray Wyatt like had a return, and it did kind of like have this, they hit a brick wall basically with him after the LA Knight like glow in the dark Mountain Dew black match or whatever it was at Royal Rumble.
Oh yeah, because it was like, is he gonna go against like Lashley or Brock?
Right, exactly. And then I guess it just felt like they weren't sure where to go with it. They had the whole Uncle Howdy introduction, and yeah, I mean, he was at the top and just kind of like with his top hat and laughing or whatever. But it kind of felt like they were spinning their wheels right there, even though he just debuted at Extreme Rules that October.
I
So he
think
was
that
only there for like
was
3.
too though.
What's that?
I think that's when he got sick.
You're right. But I mean, like, besides like the sickness, like the feud with LA Knight and stuff, like it wasn't well received either. So I mean that's I guess that's one of them. And again, they did have like concepts and ideas that they wanted to do, according to that documentary that just didn't happen because Bray Wyatt passed away. But yeah, I mean that kind of thing. Like sometimes you have like a super hyped up, return. You know what? I could even put like Damage Control at the beginning when Dakota Kai came back, and they had that whole like group formation. I think it was also still a little rocky. I feel like it never truly hit its stride. I thought the Bailey like the breakup that they had between each other with Bailey was good, but I didn't think they made as strong of an impact as they would have wanted it to. If I'm looking at it, looking back at it now. But yeah, can you guys think of anyone else like that?
Probably a bunch.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we've gotten this. I think we've been dealing with good writing and kind of got desensitized from all the recent bad writing that it's like all just one big blur.
That's true. We're like, man, we're just kind of spoiled for good
Yeah,
content now.
it's too good right now.
I mean, like even just to throw like Bryan Danielson for an AEW debut. I mean, that was probably one of the best runs of a AEW wrestler. As far as like a debut and then living up more or less to the hype, and then having a pretty good run for on the AEW side. I would say would go to Bryan Danielson.
Cody's had a nice return.
That's true. That's another good one. I mean, that was another one where it was like, well, it seems like he's going to show up because he resigned like a month and a half before WrestleMania season. Then they say that Seth Rollins is going to have a unknown opponent,
And it's a real nightmare.
and it's a real nightmare.
Oh God, was that
can't-
what they said? Because I don't even remember.
Just little things like that.
Yeah.
Not
Little
quite
winks and
that.
nudges.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes like they do say things like that, and they are like that's not what we meant at all. Like it just happened to. Like I think that with the CM Punk thing, they were saying the same thing. And someone was just like connecting dots with that. They're like, no, we actually that wasn't like a plan. It just kind of worked out that way.
Sure.
Same thing with the Mercedes Monet. The what were they calling it? Something in Boston. Oh, Boston, like BOSS.
Oh yeah, I mean that was an obvious one for sure.
Like, oh, I don't know who's showing up then.
I mean the same thing with like the CM Punk and United Center.
Punk.
You're telling me you booked the United Center for no reason at all? Oh, I guess was it a Rampage debut? Is that what it was?
Yeah,
That
it was
wasn't
a
the first
Rampage debut.
Yeah, so you're gonna tell me there's no reason there's all this ice cream here.
Yeah. But also, yeah, the United Center. I mean, come on. So yeah, I mean that was
First
like the
dance.
worst kept secret. Yeah. Here, well, let's finish.
Kenny Omega kept wearing shirts that started with CM
Was he?
Monster, yeah, like shit like that.
How long was he doing that? Like, how long were they kind of teasing it out?
Like a month.
Oh well, then I guess yeah, he was just being super like wink wink nudge, but like very obvious giant winks.
He kept wearing shirts that were relatable.
Oh man, I gotta see that. I gotta see that back because yeah, I didn't know that they were doing that. But yeah, I wanted to. We can finish the podcast with this question, and it kind of pertains more to the future. And this could be AEW or WWE. But who do you hope to see? Let's say 2025. We'll keep it more tight of a time window. Who do you hope to see like surprise return or debut in either company? If you had to take a stab.
I mean, probably Adam Copeland showing up again, I would imagine, for AEW.
Do you think he's coming back soon?
I mean, it's been a minute, I think, since when did he break his ankle? Like, shoot, like,
Summertime?
it's been half a year, I think.
Almost,
Yeah.
if not.
Who's he barking at? Can you hear his barking?
No.
Okay, good.
No. I heard a little bit actually.
Okay.
No, that's a good one.
I'm kind of waiting for Asuka to
Kenny.
return because I'm curious.
I need Kenny Omega, bro.
That's true.
Or Charlotte Flair,
She's
too.
injured too, isn't she?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm more curious to see like how that whole damage control thing's gonna handle, or if they'll just like break them up because like Io Sky's like good now or something like that. I don't know what's going on.
I guess they're technically good. Like damage control is good.
Yeah, but it's just like it just happened. You know, it's like what happened?
Yeah. That one needs some explaining to do. I'm trying to think because they got the Motor City Machine Guns. I'm trying to think maybe like a Jordan Grace actually coming to the WWE instead of just being a TNA person and then showing up. You know, I think that'd be a good one. Stephanie Vaquer and Julia. I mean those are really big ones just recently. So I'm hoping to see more women wrestlers too to just make the jump. Speaking of, I mean, I will forever manifest an AJ Lee return debut. I feel like it's got to happen. It's got to happen at the Rumble. I don't know why. I just have a feeling. And I guess I said that last year, but I think because CM Punk just debuted, I was like, there's no way. She probably needs to see how it goes. And he's been kind of saying that she's been a little more like curious or invested in like his, you know, how he's doing and that kind of stuff. So I hope his enthusiasm for WWE kind of rubs off on her. I think she had a better relationship and leaving the company. She left on better terms than he did. So I hope she comes back because that's one of the few like women wrestlers who like were at that ass end of the Divas era, and she didn't necessarily, you know, go through that women's revolution, whatever you want to call it. Like she felt like a catalyst, but she didn't, you know, enjoy the fruits of her labor, I guess, if you want to kind of put it that way. She has like all these people that just debuted after she left. 'Cause I think she left in what, 2015? Yeah. So, I mean, like all these people that just started wrestling that have now been multi-time champions, like she's got a whole roster of people she could go up against. And she's another one of those people that is, you know, second to none on the microphone. So, looking forward to that.
Big Justice.
But yeah, any other thoughts? Do you have anyone else that you can think of as a debut? It could be a Rumble appearance, it could be a WrestleMania appearance because I feel like we have one every year at least.
Penta and Ray Phoenix will end up somewhere else. It seems like.
So Penta's already did he sign with the WWE?
That's what they're saying.
But Mysterio, Ray Phoenix so he's part of that tag team, right? And is he still under AEW contract?
We don't know.
Because like he's the one who's been kind of complaining about like his injuries and things, and apparently they weren't like listening to him. That doesn't seem.
Lucha Bros also up there.
Yeah.
In the tag team.
So that they seem more likely to be in WWE, I think.
Probably.
Because I do think WWE needs some more tag teams too. Especially if you like split the belts up, and now each brand has to have a whole number of tag teams. I think they gotta build that up more. So that's a good one.
I think it'll be good for all the staple tag teams, like all the teams that are WWE grown, to deal with like Motor City Machine Guns and the Lucha Bros.
I feel like they got to give LWO something to do too, because they just feel kind of like we're here. And like Zelina Vega hasn't had too much to do. But I feel like at least with like the introduction of those mid-tier belts, I hope that gives some of these girls something to chew on, you know, with the mid-tier belts. So
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that's a wrap for this episode of the Chi-Town Shoot podcast. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, rate us, and leave your feedback. Tune in next time for more wrestling madness. Until then, keep marking out.